Belts.
Welcome back to the House Committee on Government Operations and Military Affairs. We're here this Thursday afternoon to pick up a new bill, H 585, an act relating to amending the pension system for sheriffs, certain deputy sheriffs. And I know our own Representative Murwicki's been working on this, so I'm hoping you can tee things up for us.
Thank you. And I can't honestly take credit for working on this because this has been an amazing effort of years of work, actually. And Sheriff Anderson is our sheriff in Windham County, and we meet regularly and often I get an earful on what we need to do in regards to the pensions. Now, earlier today, the first bill we heard today was one of the more long, complex bills we heard. Then that was bookended with a truly short and simple bill. This bill is kind of in between there. It's a simple idea, I think, but there's a lot of details in it. And that's why right now, my name and Dan Noyes is at the top of this bill. But I think we're going to need to do some more work on this, and this should probably be a committee bill. Basically, the Sheriff's Association is in a pension group that's outside the far from what the rest of the state employees enjoy. And the biggest piece of that I understand is it's 30 years before you can draw down, hit retirement and start drawing down. Whereas most of all the others are 20 years and out. And it's a huge barrier to keeping people on and enticing people in. So this could go far towards retention and enlistment, and recruitment. So for that reason, I think it's something we owe our sheriffs to give them another tool to bring more people on board. And as for the details, as we go on, there's other reasons why this is an important bill and will be beneficial. The bottom line, I have been assured, and Chris Roop is over there, that I'm going to quote right now, but without yet getting a fiscal note, it looks like this is revenue neutral. So it's not like they're coming here asking for money. It's just a shifting of a position. And with that, do you want Rick to come up next?
Yeah, so I think what we'll do is have legislative counsel, we'll have Rick come and walk us through just what's in the bill. So we get the what, and then we'll have our witnesses tell us the why and offer any additional context or recommendations. Rick, thank you for being back.
Good afternoon. Rick Sagel, legislative counsel. I want to apologize to the vice chair. I think in the cafeteria yesterday, I called you Mark. Yeah, I knew it was Matt, but at that moment it was M with 4 letters, and that was as close as I can get. So hopefully you misheard me, but if you didn't, I know your name is Matt, but for some reason I had a brief mental lapse during that moment.
Legislative counsel now adding to the punchiness.
That's crazy. I can't come in here and just give you a boring rundown. I got to make it interesting. So thanks for having me back. This is H 585, a bill I wrote. So I'm more familiar with this than I was with the grants bill that I walked through last week. So yes, Representative Murwicki, am I saying that correctly?
You got it.
Okay. This is a fairly complex bill, and I will occasionally have to kind of go back to my notes and maybe help you all understand what I'm referring to when I say subdivision F23. It's going to be a little confusing here, but I'll maybe make it as easy as I can. Some of you may remember that this committee helped create Group G a couple years ago for Department of Corrections employees. So there is a proposal that we move all sheriffs and certain deputy sheriffs into this new Group G. And this is what this bill attempts to do. So if you look at 455 at page 1 and really into page 2, we are kind of adding to the definition of Group G. As you see there, Part I doesn't really change except for Vermont Psychiatric Care Hospital. As we go through these bills, we're updating some outdated references. So that's not really substantive to this bill. However, that is a change. And part two is a substantive change. You are adding these certain employees to Group G who either were employed on or after January 1st, 2025, or if employed before December 31st, 2024, made the election to join Group G. So basically, if you are a new employee in 2025, you will be in Group G if you're a county sheriff or certain deputy sheriff. If you are currently a sheriff or deputy sheriff, you have the choice. Okay. So and you can see here who we are including, all sheriffs, deputy sheriffs who are employed by county sheriff's department that participate in the Vermont employee retirement system and have attained level 2 or level 3 law enforcement officer certification from the Vermont Criminal Justice Council, and CC are required to perform law enforcement duties as a primary function of their employment. So we're just ensuring that the right people are included in this option. Okay, skip down to 13. We are kind of adding the definition of what normal retirement means. And the first paragraph there, again, is just updating the Vermont Psychiatric Care Hospital. And if you scroll down to, I'm in page 5 at this point. So page 4 does not really have any substantive change either. Page 5, subdivision 4, underlined, adds in the sheriffs and deputy sheriffs who meet those qualifications I just talked about. If they were employed on or before June 30th, 2008, and are still employed as of December 31st, 2024, and make the decision to join Group G, this is their new normal retirement definition. That they are either 62, and by the way, it's the earlier of these three things. They're either 62 and following completion of 5 years of service, or completion of 30 years of creditable service, or 55 years of age and following completion of 20 years of creditable service. So this is tracking the same thing we did with the Department of Corrections employees. This is all not quite copy and paste, but this is very similar to how we're treating the previous Group G.
This is a clarifying question, Representative Cooper.
Probably.
Go ahead and lay it on Mr. Sabo with the knowledge that he's new to doing all having this particular policy portfolio.
In the designation of 1, 2, and 3, you're talking about eligibility for retirement. You're not talking about accumulation of benefit.
Correct.
Accumulation of what?
Benefit,
Thank you.
still based on percentage salary per year.
Yeah, the amount of retirement is not being set here yet, but it's further in the statute. Yeah.
So in the military, we call it minimum retirement is kind of what you're getting at, sort of,
Basically, when are you eligible to retire? Right.
sort of.
Subdivision 5. This is now the group that has been employed after July 1st, 08 and are still employed as of December 31st, 2024, who make the decision to join Group G. Pretty similar, but it is the earlier of 65 years of age and following completion of 5 years of service, attainment of 87 points, reflecting the combination of age and years of service, or 55 years of age following completion of 20 years of service. And finally, we have the employees who are new as of January 1st, 2025. They are by default placed in Group G, just want to make that clear. And they have the following retirement eligibility times at 55, following completion of 20 years of service, 65, following completion of 5 years of service. Oh, just those two, sorry. Either or. Okay. So we're in section 459. This is where we kind of get into the calculation of the retirement. We are adding, you see 6A, we're adding in the new deputy sheriffs and sheriffs. I'll talk about that in a second. Same thing with part B. You are adding in certain groups of sheriffs here into 459. Page 8. Page 9, nothing substantive, page 8. on page 9, you are clarifying that the sheriffs and deputy sheriffs who select Group G are no longer in Group F. Just want to make that clear, okay? That those sheriffs and deputy sheriffs are now considered Group G. Section 4, still on page 9. This is session law that makes it clear that they have a one-time irrevocable election for these Group G retirement benefits. On or before September 1st, 2024, the Department of Human Resources, in consultation with the Office of the State Treasurer, shall establish a list of positions newly eligible for Group G of the VSERS, which shall be limited to the following: all sheriffs and deputy sheriffs who, again, these same ABC, have met these certain qualifications. Part B, in establishing any new deputy sheriff position on and after January 1st, 2025, the Department of State's attorneys and sheriffs, in consultation with Sheriff's Department, shall identify that position as eligible for either Group C membership or Group G membership pursuant to the criteria set forth in the previous A subsection. Now, C1, I do have maybe a question we should, if we take this up, should be kind of clarified. A sheriff or deputy sheriff who qualifies for Group G shall have a one-time option to transfer to Group G on or before December 1st, 2024. That's kind of confusing to me. I think that maybe should be December 30th, 2024. But I think we just maybe need to clarify, because it later says you have 30 days to make that decision, or 30 days from the day of hire to make that decision. So that, to me, we need to maybe shore that up if we decide to move forward with this. For a sheriff or deputy sheriff who qualifies for Group G, who is first employed on or after December 1st, 2024, election to join Group G shall be made as soon as possible, but shall be within 30 days from the employee's date of hire. And there it is saying that it's irrevocable. If you decide to join Group G, you cannot change that decision. The effective date, it would be January 1st for this new group plan. For employees deciding on Group G, January 1st would be the date it starts. All past service accrued to the date of transfer shall be calculated based upon the plan in which it was accrued, with all provisions and penalties, if applicable, applied. And then finally, Part E, nothing shall be read to extend post-retirement health or other insurance benefits to Group G members who work for county sheriff's departments. And then you have the effective date.
Any questions about the words on the page? Actually, we may need to get a little bit more context from our witnesses before we have too many questions, but Representative Pango, did you ask?
No, I'll ask it another time. Thank you.
And this, I imagine that it'll take us a couple of sessions to really get the language right here, even if there's consensus on some things, but Representative Cooper, did you have a question?
So, I was trying to have one. So primarily the GC conversion is to be more flexible on mandatory retirement date.
That would be a question probably for either the sheriff's department or the sheriff's association or the treasury department.
C is still 55 and
Yeah, so
G is time service.
but Rick, just to clarify, the conversion here with sheriffs is actually F to G,
Right.
right?
Well, some of the deputies, they're only new hires.
I think we're gonna get some testimony, on that, because we've got the issue of sheriffs and sheriff's deputies, but then we have the state transport deputies that are a little different, so.
Yeah.
So many categories of people here.
This was a fun one, yeah. One of my first major pension bills, like, oh, this is nice and simple, but yeah, it's really complex, but I think the bill gets the point across, but certainly there might need to be some clarification, and based on the witnesses, what they want to have happen, we can certainly work with them. Yeah.
Well, thank you for giving us the first pass here. Invite you to stick around.
Yeah.
Good work. Mr. Duggan, would you mind taking the witness stand, please? Thanks.
Good evening, everyone. Tim Duggan, Director of Vermont Retirement Systems. Thank you for having me here today. I appreciate the opportunity to speak about this. If I may, I'd actually like to zoom out a little bit. The words on the page it's kind of nonlinear, referencing this section to that section. So I was thinking I'd start by talking about the unique role that sheriff's positions have in the retirement systems. The relation is a little different than pretty much any other positions. If you're a teacher, you're in the teacher system and you're in the same group generally. Sheriff's offices had a choice to go into either the state system or the municipal system. And I think we have 7 sheriff's offices that are in the state system. And I believe it's 4, maybe 5 in the municipal system. So right there is sort of a unique factor. And just to be clear, this bill applies only to those that are in the state system. When you're in the municipal system, there already is an opportunity for a 20-year retirement plan. And so that issue is addressed there. In the state system, so these 7 offices that are in the state system that would be subject to this bill, the statutes say that if you're a transport deputy employed by the state, you're in Group C. Group C is our general law enforcement 20-year plan that state troopers, game wardens, all of those positions are in Group C. Nothing in this bill is going to affect Group C. So from the whole universe of different sheriff's positions, this bill addresses a discrete group that are the deputies in the state system who are not transport deputies. It also affects, because all of the sheriffs, the actual county sheriffs, are in Group F of the state, regardless of whether their office is in municipal or state system. So this bill is going to address all 14 sheriffs, and then those deputies that are in the state system who are not transport deputies. Right? Delineate, does anyone have any questions on that?
So this bill will have no impact on the state transport deputies who are already state employees
In Group C.
in Group C.
Correct. So I wanted to articulate that because early on, as these discussions, and Sheriff Marcoux, I know, may speak and talk about the years that he's worked on this, a lot of the discussions were about whether or not those offices in the state system should be allowed to transfer to the municipal system to achieve that 20-year plan. While there is a 20-year plan in the Group C in the state system, that's both subject to mandatory retirement age, and frankly, it costs a fair bit more. So I think that was, given the dollar amount at issue there, that was not a route that folks generally wanted to go down. So there was sort of an impasse where the only option appeared to be moving offices from the state system into the municipal system, because those decisions have always been thought of as irrevocable. And when you're transferring folks from one system to another, there's liabilities and assets that are attached to those individuals that would move. And you folks commissioned a study that we did last year, and we calculated at the time it would be a little north of $2 million would be the liability that the state system sheds, but a little more than $4 million would be the liability that the municipal system would accrue. And so there's a $2 million difference there. So on top of the fact that these were irrevocable decisions, there was also a cost that was, I think, caused some trouble with having the issue move forward.
And just to be clear, that was if the same population of sheriffs and sheriff's deputies moved from the state system, Group F, to the municipal system. So they went from VSERS to VERS.
Okay, that's exactly right. So fast forward, and Act 114 came out, and the legislature created Group G for certain corrections workers and mental health workers. And the real key feature of Group there's a couple, but one was that it was a 20-year retirement plan. So it had a multiplier that would allow an employee to get to full retirement. That's 50% of AFC in 20 years. And it was done in a way that the added cost is paid for by the employee as an additional amount to the employee contributions. So it didn't add to the liabilities of the pension system. Those additional costs were fully paid for by the employees. And so as we continued our conversations with the Sheriff's Association, the idea of Group G came up, and it was, in my view, a really thoughtful and clever way to address what had been a really challenging issue in the past that, we did not have a clear way to solve. This opportunity will provide the deputy sheriffs and the sheriffs with an opportunity to get on a 20-year retirement plan. And it'll do so in a way that does not add to the unfunded liabilities of the system, because those costs are paid for by those who will be in the system. So it was a really neat opportunity, I think. It was a really good collaborative exercise working with our partners in the sheriff's space. One of the things that I've heard from Sheriff Anderson, Sheriff Marcoux, is the need to recruit, retain employees. And that's what a pension system is designed to do. It should be there to be both a tool to recruit and retain. And so this is a opportunity that's feasible for us from just an administrative standpoint. This is something we just did for a little shy of 1,000 employees for corrections and mental health workers. The population here we're talking about is about 1/10 of that. And we already have a path that worked pretty well last spring. And so we're comfortable moving forward with this idea. I'm happy to answer more specific questions, but I thought kind of taking that broader look might be helpful to orient what we're talking about here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And again, I'm trying to get my head around it a little bit. You talked about the 4 or 5 departments that are currently on the municipal retirement program, correct?
Those are going to stay in the municipal system. Nothing's happening. If you're in the municipal system, that office will stay in the municipal system.
Okay, that's my question though, and I don't see that in here, but is there an advantage at all for them to move into Group G? I mean, are we going to be looking at some that say, I don't want to stay in the municipal system anymore, want to move to Group G?
I'll defer to the sheriff's offices about their preferences, but the key issue that we were working here was the fact that those municipal offices do have a 20-year plan already. So, and it was the fact that the state offices didn't have that. That is the problem we were trying to solve now. I don't foresee that. I haven't heard that from anyone in any of the discussions we've had. I wouldn't want to speak for any of those offices though.
I just think it's important to, not overlook that if it's a possibility to maybe address that now somehow, if that could be a possibility.
I think as sort of referring back to the report we did last year, I think we've always looked at those decisions as irrevocable. That's how they're set forth in statute. So from just that administrative point of view, I think that's been the historical position, but I just offer that as a matter of historical context.
Thank you.
One question that might be useful for the committee to understand as we're sort of, zoomed out on taking a first look at this bill and have you here, Tim, is what is the policy virtue around the mandatory retirements and how those kind of played into the structural health pension system? So why do we have the 20-year mandatory retirements in some of the law enforcement categories?
On that question, I think I'm going to actually want to defer to law enforcement because I don't see that as something that is, from a policy perspective, it's not really, it exists in the retirement statutes, but the policy, I believe, emanates from the practical aspects of the job. So I feel a little over my skis, talking about whether or not, one age is better than another. We've looked at that issue, in the past and sort of in another report, that we did a few years ago, Law Enforcement Retirement Benefits Study Committee, that's 2 or 3 years old at this point. And we looked at sort of what's the rationale for these positions. And I think they've generally been because of the physical nature of the positions. That said, I do believe there are opportunities where someone may retire from a Group C position with the state and maybe take a position with a sheriff's office or a municipal police force in a law enforcement position, but that's not subject to the retirement age. So it's an issue I don't feel really qualified to, speak on from a practical perspective. From a, funding or other perspective, I don't think it plays a huge role because, a lot of folks in Group C can retire at age 50 if they have 20 years, and many do, not a lot work beyond that. So much so that as part of Act 114, you may recall, we put in an incentive for Group C members to actually continue to work on until 57 and be able to accrue a little bit more above that 50% as a pension benefit. So, from the funding retirement perspective, I don't see a major policy.
I think back in the day, just about everything that had any FBI, all those government overarching positions for 20 years, 55. Probably just something that historically has stuck with us. And there was, I don't know that there still is, the assumption that police work was tough and you were going to die early. Essentially.
Well, I'm definitely interested to hear from law enforcement and folks if the kind of flexibility that we pondered in Act 114, especially given the way that we've heard from every single law enforcement agency head that's come before us in the last couple of years that, there are labor issues and I'm wondering if there's an opportunity potentially to build off of that incentive structure or think a little bit more about whether the mandatory part of the retirement makes sense or whether there are things that we could do to provide flexibility that, might not have a negative actuarial impact. I mean, I certainly don't want to do anything that harms the pension fund or sort of makes it difficult for us to live up to our promises to law enforcement and honor the service and how hard that work is. But be interested to know if there are situations where we're preventing somebody who is healthy and doing a great job from continuing on in the same job sort of arbitrarily because of this policy. So I'm interested to go back and read that report because I don't know that I was doing this particular policy work when that came out. Representative Morgan.
Yeah, it's just a commentary. I think to a degree, I'll say to a degree, and I don't want to speak for these folks, but analogous to the military world is, at 62, I'll say it's a young person's game to a degree. And I'm just throwing that out there. I think there's some realities of the matter of that, like we military folks, they say, time to the next generation. A little bit of that in there, I guess.
Yeah.
It's just throwing out food for thought. And I don't know, I may be off the mark 100% by saying that. I don't.
You don't want somebody backing you up that shows up at a Walmart.
No, point well taken. Any other
You
questions?
said it a little more bluntly, but I.
Oh, so I guess to be really explicit about it, while we've got Tim in the chair, at least conceptually, the treasurer's office supports H585 and allowing this move and transition to Group G.
Yes, we think this is a good bill. We think this is the result of really solid and productive collaborative work with stakeholders. And importantly, we see it as cost neutral to the system. I think that's those issues. We've had conversations with our actuaries specifically asking, should we be rerunning the numbers on this, and the response was the cohort is so small and the analysis from Group G is so fresh that the same cost neutrality determinations hold, which gives us comfort that both on a set size and the actual amounts, this is cost neutral. So
If I'm recalling correctly, and maybe when we bring this back up, we should look at some numbers just so we're all on the same page. But my understanding was the employee contributions are significantly higher in return for the earlier retirement.
Yep. Yes, sir. Sorry. And I brought the numbers just for perspective. So for most Group F members this year, they're paying 7.65% of pay for this. And for Group G, most Group G members, they're paying 12.33. It's almost 5% of pay higher, it's substantial. And so it's that additional amount that pays for the accelerated timeframe of retirement.
Seeing nods from
See,
JFO over here too, so
I got some
agreement on that actuarial neutrality. All right. Good. Don't want to do anything to hurt the pension system. We've done so much work to try to be healthy.
I imagine that would be high on the agenda of concerns. So, yes.
I will never tire of reminding myself and all of us who are trying to keep the pension system up. Well, thank you very much, Tim. Any last questions for Tim before we hear from the sheriff? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
So Sheriff Anderson, do you want to join us?
Thanks, Tim.
Mr. Chair, would you mind if Sheriff Marcoux joins me?
I would not mind at all. Sheriff Marcouche, step on up. That's okay. He's one of the very few people that's allowed to carry one in this building.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, committee. I won't make the mistake I made in House Judiciary and call you Your Honor.
Used to that. All right, so everybody's watching today.
Of course I had it. Of course I have it. For the record, Mark Anderson, I'm the Sheriff of Wyndham County. I'm President of Vermont Sheriff's Association.
Roger Marcoux, Lamoille County Sheriff, Vice President of the Association.
So I'm gonna start off and fall on my sword. I like to come to this committee as a subject matter expert of policy that we talk about. And when we talk about the words on this page, I can't do that as a subject matter expert. And so if anyone else is reading it and saying, what does that mean? I'm going to defer to legislative counsel, to the treasurer's office, because I just can't speak to that level. So I'm going to speak to inputs and outputs of good policy for law enforcement. That's an area I am comfortable in. I joined the sheriff's office in 2004 personally. I joined the Group F retirement in 2007, which means I could retire at the earliest in 2037. I'm okay with that. However, in about the last 15 years, my department's gone through 200 people, including people who are employed, who have been recruited by other agencies in the state of Vermont and in other states that have 20-year retirements. Now, I was happy doing my job. I was happy going through the things that I do. I continue to be happy, but I'm also acknowledging I'm a little unique in comparison to other people that we hire, and they have other goals. I didn't start becoming aware of the importance of this until about 2020, when I ran into an entirely different problem in my organization, which was COVID. I won't go too deep other than to say we had a very simple problem, and to reflect on Mr. Duggan's comments, we are very different in comparison to how other state entities raise their or receive retirement benefits. Because sheriff's departments generally do not receive tax funds, we raise funds through our own contract operations. I have to pay, and I say I responsible for the department's funds, have to pay the retirement obligation. So each year when the ADEC, I think I'm calling the abbreviation correctly, when the ADEC changes, I don't have taxes that offset it, like the state government does, or the municipal government does. And so what we ran into is that our retirement contribution increased from somewhere, the employer's contribution increased from somewhere about 13% to over 20%. And I had no money. That's because we were funding operations through COVID. We had no revenue coming in. I had a dispatch center that operates at about $100,000 loss or more a year. But we do it because we need our deputies to communicate with our dispatch. And so it created a very weird problem, which we worked with the legislature to solve that problem. But then it said, oh boy, what are our options? And what I learned is sometime around 2000 or 2001, the Windham County Sheriff, it's either Sheriff Graham, who has since passed, or Sheriff Farnham, who is in another part of the world, made a decision for us to enter into an irrevocable deal with the state retirement system. At that time, our department was financially healthy. Talking to other sheriffs who had the same opportunity, theirs were not. So my department said we're going to do a state pension system, which was new to sheriffs, and the departments who couldn't afford it did not. Later in time, the municipal system availed itself to the sheriffs, and so this is where we got this split path of they can join the municipal system while we are locked into the state retirement system. I think that's probably about as much buildup as I'm going to give you for testimony before I hand this to Sheriff Marcoux, who's done this work for 8 years. And I've ridden in a seat next to him, now literally, to basically try to put forward this policy. But I do want to be very clear, the Vermont Sheriff's Association supports H585. And Representative Higley, to your question, that includes members of the municipal system who do not have any intention of leaving the municipal system because they have access to the 20-year retirement, but I appreciate the consideration for them.
Sheriff Markey.
Good afternoon. And as Sheriff Anderson stated, this has been a long, long project, and it sort of dovetails into other discussions that we're having with this committee on professionalism and trying to professionalize the Vermont sheriffs. So one thing that I just want to emphasize is that this bill will not only allow our non-state paid deputies who work in law enforcement situations to finally get the 20-year retirement, which is going to make them competitive or make us competitive with Beamers and Group C, but it's also going to allow sheriffs themselves to join this group. And that's important because we're trying to get the most professional candidates that we can have to run for office. So, so this is a huge deal for us. I'm 65 years old. I shouldn't be doing this job. When Governor Douglas interviewed me for this, I was working for the federal government. I was 43, and he says, "You are the first sheriff that's going to be allowed into Group C." Well, that lasted about 3 months after he had baited me into this, and the legislature kicked me out. So, and I understand why, because you cannot mandate an elected official to with a mandatory retirement. So, but you know, as you sir said, this is a young person's job. Hopefully, you know, when you get on into years like I have, I still have value in different ways. But to get out there in the street and do this job, you know, I could be a liability. So, having said that, I really appreciate the collaboration through frustrating times and good times with the retirement board, with Tim's group and Ashlyn and everybody else, and Beth Pierce when she was the treasurer, and Mike Peachy. You know, I'm proud in this day and age that we kind of hung in there with disagreements, and then we got to we finally figured something out that would work. This is it's going to be a game changer for our deputies, because not only will we be able to recruit having a 20-year retirement, but it'll also allow us to be competitive with folks that want to jump from Group C or Beamers that are in 20-year plans to our departments, if that's the type of law enforcement that they would produce. So, yeah, I guess I'll end with that and answer any questions, but I appreciate the committee listening to this and hope that you receive it with favorable thoughts about it here and moving it along. So.
Questions for the sheriffs? I take it that both of your offices have folks in the Group F in the state system.
That's correct.
Yes.
It's another question I had and it's completely escaped my mind. And so currently there is no mandatory retirement age for the non-state paid deputies.
Correct.
Well,
And my understanding is Group G would have no mandatory retirement as
Yeah.
well. And that's one of the reasons we, working with, Mr. Duggan and Treasurer Pishak, this made sense. It still doesn't force someone to leave if they wanted and were capable of working longer.
what we are seeing is state troopers that come to work. I've had a lot of them work for me that have mandatory retirement and then come to our office and work for another, there's still a lot of gas in the tank. So, the ability for people to make the decision as to when they want to leave for us is big because people can maybe transfer from a patrol job. In my department, we have patrol and we're the police department 24/7. And when they get tired of that, if they have the ability to perhaps go to court security or something, they can keep on working. So, and keep on being valuable and not being mandated to retire when we've got such a problem with openings with police statewide.
Representative Murphy, go ahead.
That's a question, sort of tangential to this, but statewide, where are you at with staffing?
I believe the state police were right around 40 people down and they put through probably 10 or 14 in the last academy. I think if you ask most sheriff's departments, for instance, we can use two more full-time people. We're constantly receiving calls, and I'm sure Sheriff Anderson's the same way, with construction companies and what have you, trying to line up people for next year's. They're going to bid right now, and they need those blue lights on the interstate or the secondary roads to make it safe for their people to work. And it's a struggle to try to meet all of those needs. So, but I'm afraid of the future. I've lost 2 people. I've been pretty steady for 3 years. We worked through COVID. I lost 2 people here in the last 6 months that were seasoned people. One of them's going to law school and the other one just wants to get out of law enforcement altogether. And I was surprised. They were valued, people with a lot of experience. So I don't know what the future of our industry is, but I'm concerned about it.
Other questions from the committee at this point? So I think we'll come back to this bill and want to talk a little bit about JFO, the different groups, make sure we dig a little bit into the specifics of the bill, but it seems like with the support of the treasurer's office and the actuarial neutrality, I don't see any big hangups. We'll just need to dot our I's and cross our T's unless anybody on the committee is seeing anything that I've missed. But I appreciate that there's been this long effort to try to figure out a way and that the Group G creation has an opportunity, not just for those corrections employees, but also for sheriffs who maybe are not in the most desirable situation. So great. Well, committee, I think I'll let our sheriffs go. I don't think there's anything other things for us right now. So we've got a little extra time before Florida to catch up on some of the points. I am working offline with Representative Nugent and a couple of our colleagues in the administration on H-140 and seeing if we can come up with an amendment to that. And is continuing to be interested in folks have particular ideas or thoughts on the municipal and statewide miscellaneous ethics bills. So I know we've got a number of vehicles that have been introduced now. I'm going to really try over the next couple of weeks for us to try to get a couple of things ready to start moving out so that we don't have quite so many planes in the air all at the same time. But I appreciate everybody hanging in there while we get many of these important things on the table. So, great.